I have a very heavy subject for you, and I have a great person to talk about it. We're going to touch around the areas of domestic violence, violence in the home life. We're going to talk about protective orders and restraining orders.
Welcome to Lewis on the Law.
You are listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I will be your host for the next 48 minutes or so. I've got a great show for you guys today. I have Narissa Juitt Jackson back on the air with me. Thank you for coming back, Narissa.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to have you. We have a really, really good show for you guys today. It's centering around a very, very touchy subject. We're going to touch around the areas of domestic violence, violence in the home life. We're going to talk about protective orders and restraining orders. Now, Narissa, what type of things do we have to think about on this issue?
When you're thinking about a protective order, you want to think about who is getting the protective order and whom they're getting against. So it's important to realize your relationship with this person, because sometimes not every person is entitled to a protective order.
Okay. Now, let me back up for a second. Narissa, let me introduce you formally. Now, you're of the Juitt-Jackson Law Firm. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm out of downtown on Peachtree Street. Okay.
And what kind of do you handle these type of issues?
Yes. I handle divorces, child support, child custody, and also domestic protective orders and things like that.
Okay, so this is something that you really want to take a look at if you feel threatened or something like that, or if you actually are experiencing violence in some sort of way. Now, is this really something that's geared only towards domestic partners?
No. So it's not, when people think of domestic or protective orders, they think, hey, husband, wife, maybe get in an argument and one person files against another. That's not necessarily true. It can be against family members or roommates. It just depends on their relationship and if they're living together or not.
It can be against roommates?
It can be against roommates. So, for instance, if you and your roommate are in a altercation or you feel threatened against your roommates, you can file a protective order against them.
Now, does this have to be just in cases where people are living in the same household?
Not necessarily. Sometimes the people don't live in the household, but they may have some kind of intimate relationship. So you may have as a spouse that's not in the home that you may file a protective order against.
Oh, okay. Now that's really interesting, because I have this friend, and this is actually, I'm not going to mention any names or anything like that, but their neighbor is throwing trash over their yard. Right. Now, I guess that doesn't count, huh?
No. So, that may be irritating, but I don't know if it rises to the level of a protective order. Now, there may be some instances where, say, for instance, your neighbor is constantly looking out of his window and following you down the street and texting you and posting things about you. That may rise to the level of a protective order.
Yeah, that's pretty creepy. So if someone's posting things online about you, that rises to the level of a protective order?
Right. So a lot of things with the internet now cause rise to protective orders. So, for instance, posting someone's phone number, posting unsolicited pictures online. You have to think that the internet is a place of is a place of access now. So anyone can view it. And if you post pictures or send pictures to someone and you say, well, don't send this to someone, and then they post it online, you will want some kind of recourse to get them off the line. Okay,
now that seems really odd. Now, how is that mechanism enforced?
It's enforced through what we call a temporary protective order, or a TPO. So depending on the relationship or the occasions that it happens, you can go to the Superior Court of whatever county that the other person lives in and file a protective order.
If someone is stalking you, this is what you're actually kind of getting at earlier with the following and the putting pictures up and stuff like that. So what is the difference between a protective order and a restraining order?
So a protective order is an order to protect the individual person who is seeking the order. So it is asking this person, if something were to happen, hey, police, I have the authority. This person is to stay away from me. The restraining order is the same thing. I think it is analogous. So some people think restraining order, some people think temporary protective order. They're the same thing.
So what are your steps here in going towards a protective order and getting one?
Right. So what a person wants to do is figure out where this person resides, what county, because that's going to be the county that you go and seek the protective order. A lot of counties have victim advocates, or they have resources in the clerk's office to help you guide you through that process. For instance, in Fulton County, they have the Safe Families Office for a lot of times domestic violence cases.
Okay, so you file a protective order in the right county. Is that the next? Is that the only step, and then they bring them into court, or how does that go about?
So that's just the first step. First, you have to file a accurate petition to even get a protective order for a long period of time. What we call an ex parte order is the first step. And so to spell it out, ex parte is when the other party isn't there to answer. Typically, you have both parties in court, and they are able to respond to the allegations against them. But first, you have to be able to get an ex parte order from a judge that says, hey, this is rising to the level. We believe that there's a possible potential protective order that needs to be in place. Well, you have 14 days to answer, to respond to your allegations.
Okay, so once you've gotten this ex parte order, you're actually serving the other party, and they have 14 days to respond to the allegations.
Correct. It's a really fast process. So you have to come to court and be able to respond to the allegations against you, and at that time, the court decides whether we're going to extend it or dismiss this action. Okay.
So are most of the protective orders, are they really centered around acts of violence?
Acts of violence is a broad definition, I think, with Georgia law. Mm-hmm. So when acts of violence, instantly you think of hitting and stabbing or something just incredibly violent. But it may be threats, sometimes where you are receiving consistent threats. Like I said before, stalking, where someone is consistently following you. Maybe even I've seen protective orders where a person is not physically there, but they may have gotten 100 phone calls from this person over the course of a day. And so that was enough to get a protective order.
Okay, so does it always have to center, so now it's not actual violence, but does it have to center around the fear of violence, potential violence, or some kind of fear of that?
You would think it does, but a lot is really subjective. So what may be fearful for me may not be fearful for you. So it's mostly, is this going to be an instance where this person needs to be protected? Is this going to be an instance that this person is going to consistently engage in this kind of behavior in which they need to be protected from? And those are what the courts are looking at, and when they're looking to grant a protective order.
Okay, in this day and age, there's a lot of online harassment that goes on. I mean, right. You hear about it, people being made fun of on Facebook, and I'm a little bit out of touch. I've actually been Facebooking a lot lately with this show because I can put my videos on and people actually comment and watch it. So
right.
Yes, but I'm really not a Facebook person, so I didn't get all the Facebook harassment and what do they call it?
Trolls.
They're just trolls and all kinds of things that go on. So is there any protection for that type of thing here?
It depends on the level. They have, I don't recall the name, but sometimes it gets to the point where the harassment is so much, they may put your personal information out there. That may cause the point of protective orders. But if someone's saying, hey, I hate your show, and it can, consistently posted on a Facebook page, that may not rise to the level of a protective order. But posting your personal information, that private information that's not readily available to the public, that may rise to the level of harassment.
Okay, so we've kind of covered violence, physical violence. How about violence in the past or threats in the past? Is there any help for that?
I think the threats in the past are used to assess if this person is going to do it again. So if they've done it in the past and they've consistent, and you have proof of that, you can show that, hey, this person is likely to do it again. If you're trying to get a protective order and it's something that happened a year ago, you're not likely to get a protective order for something that happened a year ago, because if so, it may not be that this person is going to commit this again.
So there has to be some kind of impending issue here.
There has to be an impending harm that's going to happen.
Okay. I want to stop you right here. We're getting towards the end of this segment. Narissa, can you go ahead and give them some contact information for you?
Sure. You can go to my website. It is www.Juitt-Jacksonlaw.com. You can shoot me an email if you have any questions or want to reach out and receive some help.
Okay, my name is James Lewis. I am your host. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. We will be with you for the next, I guess I've taken out 12 minutes, so 36 minutes. I was never really good in math. That's why I went to law schools, because I could never really add or any, and especially if you get past adding. But we are here each and every single week to bring you legal information. This is not to be confused with an advice of an attorney. If you actually have a strong legal issue, you need to go ahead and contract with an attorney. If you need to find an attorney, you can go ahead and hit me on my website. And if I can't help you with your legal issue, I can point you towards an attorney who can. We'll be back with more stuff. This is a heavy show today. We're kind of getting into a big topic here. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I'm here with Narissa Juitt Jackson. We'll be back in a minute. You are listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I am here in the studio with Narissa Juitt Jackson from the Juitt-Jackson Law Firm. If you need to get in touch with me, if you have a topic for this show, you can drop me a line on my webpage. It's the last page of my webpage is a contact page. If you have an idea for a topic on this show, hit me. And if I can find an attorney I can bring on who knows something about your topic, maybe we'll talk about it on air. This show comes to you each and every single week. On my website, I have all my shows archived. So if you want to go back through to a past show, if you need information, this show is designed to be a first step in a legal process. So if you're looking for information, if you're looking for direction on a legal issue, you can go back to my webpage, you can go through the shows, and you can kind of get a feel of where you need to be, what you need to be looking for, what kind of issues are at play. Now, Narissa, we have a really heavy show today because we're talking about protective orders, temporary restraining orders, and it's centering around violence, domestic violence. And when we just left, we were talking about things that happened in the past.
Right.
So it can't just be a one-off situation, right?
Right. So it has to be something that's going to be happening again. So, for instance, if this is something that, hey, he or she may have accidentally slapped a person in the fight. I know you can't accidentally slap a person in the fight.
Whoops, my hand slipped.
As I said that. But, I mean, if it's...
Whoa, my fist just contacted with your nose. I'm so sorry.
Right. But say, for instance, that one-off situation is like a distant relative comes and visits or something, and they slap you during a Thanksgiving holiday dinner or something, and they are moving to Alaska. I mean, there's not a likelihood that this person is going to come back and slap you again based on something that you said during Thanksgiving dinner. This is one-off situation. It is a violent situation, but the likelihood that it's going to happen again is not, it's not there.
I have actually been slapped on accident before by a girlfriend. She just like wheeled around and slapped me. She's like, "Oh God, I didn't mean to do that." Just like,
you sure that was an accident?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. Okay, so it has to be likely to happen again. Now we know that it doesn't always have to be people living in the same household. Now,
right.
Earlier we talked a little bit about parents and children in protective orders, with children against parents, maybe parents against children.
Right.
Is that a real thing?
That is a real thing. So, say for instance, I'm going to use the non-heteronormative. You have a mother who may have attacked a father, and the father files a protective order against the mother, and he wants to have custody of the kids. Well, it happened in front of the kids. So it's now a situation where he's like, I don't want the mom to be around him. I need a protective order not only for myself, but the children need to be included with this. And so now the children can't necessarily visit their mother during this interim until they decide if this is going to be a temporary order or a permanent order.
Now, that with the example you just brought up is really interesting because it's something we don't really think about. I mean, is that likelihood that there's a protective order against the mom? You always, when you associate with this, you always think of it's the guy who does this, the guy who's the aggressor.
I want to say the majority of the time it is, but don't be mistaken. You as a woman can also have a protective order against you. It's not a unequal playing ground. If there are situations where mom and dad get in an argument, there can be cross protective orders against these parties. So it's very possible.
Now, is it ever the case where the child files a protective order against one of its parents?
It may be, but in those cases, they may appoint what we call a guardian ad litem, and that's kind of a term that means someone who's there on behalf of the child because they're a minor, in order to determine, hey, why is this child seeking this protective order against their parent, and is there a need for it?
Okay, so what kind of situations are we talking about here?
It could be that, say it's a mom with a single mom who, for whatever reason, is abusing their child. And this child may be a teenager and they're old enough to say, well, hey, I don't want this to happen. This is what I need I can take care of myself, but I need a protective order against my parent. Or it may be a parent that's not necessarily in the home the majority of the time. It may be a parent that they don't live with.
Okay, because when I think of that, I usually think of like maybe it's an adult child with adult parents and things have gone wrong.
It could be that as well. I mean, you think about family relationships are hard sometimes, and sometimes it results in fights, and sometimes it's a case where they need to be apart for some kind of period of time. Okay,
so now with these types of issues, and it centers around, and it's not always domestic violence, and it's not always violence, but sometimes there is violence, and sometimes there's a criminal aspect to this thing.
Right. A lot of times, if there is a criminal aspect, the one party that is determined to be the aggressor is usually arrested at the time of the incident.
Okay, now that is heavy now, because just to be clear, this what we're really talking about, a protective order is a civil issue. It's a civil case, right. And so that's actually is different from a criminal issue. So now sometimes things can get confused here, right?
Right. So to make it clear, these things can happen concurrently. You can have a criminal action at the same time that you're working to get your civil case done. So when the criminal case is going on, you have a DA who is prosecuting on your behalf. They usually assign a victim advocate to guide you through that process, to be there to help you through, to provide and get evidence on behalf of that case. There may be a bond where this person has to pay bond in order to get out. The civil case is something that you, as the victim, have to initiate. The DA is not going to initiate that on your behalf. If you want to have extra protection or more extended protection, a temporary protective order or seeking a permanent protective order is the way to go.
Okay, so then we're back into what we call the procedure of the whole issue. We're back now. The civil case or the criminal case, you're going to have someone else actually taking the lead or pushing the ball forward. Here in a civil case, it's going to be up to basically you or your attorney who's pushing the ball forward. So at first, we talked about where you file. So which court do you file with?
You want to file it in the Superior Court of the county where the person resides. So some people think, hey, I live in Fulton. This happened in Fulton, but the aggressor or the person that you're trying to get the temporary protective order against resides in DeKalb. Well, then you need to go to DeKalb County Superior Court Clerk's office. And they have an office there to help you file a temporary protective order as well.
Okay, so what is the situation if let's just get hypothetical here. Okay. You're a single woman, you have this crazy ex-boyfriend, and he doesn't live in the state. He's like living in South Carolina. However, he's driving down on the weekends, looking in your windows, knocking, banging on your door, he's screaming for you to come out and talk to him. You can't just file in the county where he lives, can you?
No. So procedurally, you can file in the county where you live now. There you have to be careful because it's going to be a little bit more difficult if they've never resided together too. Boyfriend and girlfriend relationships, they're a lot harder to get protective orders for if they've never resided for a period of time together. If they had that may cause for some separate action and not necessarily a temporary protective order.
Okay, wait a minute. So it's a little bit more difficult if they've never resided together?
Correct.
So what type of actions do they have to do to go ahead and protect themselves?
They may have to get a stalking order, which is just a different type of petition, but it still provides protection.
A stalking order? I have never heard of that.
So you have a protective order, but in that case, if he's consistently coming down, say driving from Tennessee or North Carolina, every single weekend, he's calling consistently every single weekend, and you don't know where he's residing now, but you need this protection where you live. You can petition the court to file in your county where you live. Those are special circumstances. But you definitely want to speak to an attorney or someone in the clerk's office or in the special victim advocate office to figure out where's the best place to file.
Okay, because then that seems like it's getting even trickier here. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even know what to do.
Yeah, you are definitely going down the slippery slope because there are some other considerations that you want to think about, because there may be some things you can do in his state, but you want to definitely reach out to someone and seek some legal advice.
Okay, so is it okay to file like a criminal charge while you're doing this civil case?
Yes, and it'll be up to the DA, but you want to think about where that's going to happen. If they're out of state, then it may be an out-of-state jurisdiction. You may have to speak to someone there.
Okay.
For the criminal aspect.
So what other type of things do we need to consider here?
You definitely want to consider, if you're doing this on your own, what you put in the petition, being very detailed in what happened and how it happened. That can help the court decide if, hey, this is something we need to look further about and we need to pull this person into court to answer for it.
Okay, Narissa, we have a very, very heavy topic. We're almost out of time on this section. We're going to get back to it in a minute. Narissa, go ahead and give them some contact information for you.
Sure. You can contact me at Juitt-Jackson Law. That's Juitt, JacksonLaw.com. Or you can give me a call at 678-252-9199.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I have a really great informative show for you. As you know, this show is all about empowering you, the individual. And today we're empowering people who are having problems with other people. I know the law is almost always about one person having problems with another person, but issues around protective orders, restraining orders, stalking orders can touch around really serious issues that involve the family life. We've got more coming up for you in a minute. If you need to get in touch with me, you can always give me a call at 404-610-0075. You can go ahead and hit me with an email at james@jameslewislegal.com, or you can go ahead and go to my webpage, and on the last page of my webpage, there's a contact information, and you can drop me a line. If you have a topic for this show and I like your topic, I may bring an attorney on who will actually, and that's the qualifier because I've gotten some weird ones before. But if I like your topic, I'll bring an attorney on who will actually speak to your topic. We'll be back in a minute. You are listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis, and I am here each week to give you legal information. This information is not designed to replace the advice of an attorney. If you have a serious legal issue, you need to go ahead and contract with an attorney. This show is meant to be a first step in the process. I have all my old shows archived on my website. You can go back, you can go and look. And if you have a legal issue, maybe we can help point you in the right direction or help you find the right attorney. If you have a legal issue, you can contact me. I am an attorney. And if I can't help you with your legal issue, I may be able to direct you to an attorney who can help you with your legal issue. I am honored to have Narissa Juitt Jackson back on air with me. Thank you so much, Narissa, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me again, James.
Always. And we have a heavy topic for you. Now, Narissa, before we get into it, give them some contact information for you.
Definitely go to my website, Juitt-Jackson Law. That's Juitt, JacksonLaw.com. Reach out if you have a question or just want to talk about some of these issues we're talking about today.
Excellent, excellent. So I want to get back into this. First, is there anything else we need to consider here?
We definitely need to consider kids. That's very touchy subject for some, but kids have to be included with protective orders.
Okay, so when you're talking about kids, so you're just talking about married couples, or are you talking about unmarried couples too?
Married couples, unmarried couples. If you have children together, you definitely have to consider what is going to happen if this protective order is in place. Okay,
so what do you mean? What is going to happen? I mean, like, I'm always putting this on the dad because guys, we're all just bad, right? Yeah. We're all monsters. So is it just you protecting the kid from the dad? And
for example's sake, we're taking the dad, we're protecting the kids from the dad sometimes, But there may be some circumstances where dad may be able to visit with the kids despite the fact that there's a protective order in place for mom.
Wow, now that is something I hadn't actually thought of. So mom is afraid of dad, but the kids love dad. So so there are issues involved there. So how does that work? Does the dad just kind of pick up the child from a third party?
Yeah, so it depends on if they were married or versus if they were unmarried. If they were married, dad may be able to have visitation with his kids with the protective order. It just depends on how egregious the allegations are or what's founded to be true and what's founded to be, maybe not, but we need to further investigate. You can arrange for third parties to meet. There's locations where you can have supervised visitation. So Nia's Place is out in Decatur. They do supervised visitation for parents. And
what is this place?
Nia's Place.
Nia's Place. Okay.
So it's a location. It's almost like a play center. So you come in, kids play with their parents during a designated visitation time, or maybe you can exchange at grandma's house without mom being there. So mom drops the kid off at grandma's house. Dad comes in and visit the kids at grandma's house or pick up from grandma's house. So you can kind of get creative depending on the circumstances.
Okay, now that's if you're married. Now, what if you were unmarried?
If you are unmarried, it depends if the father has legitimated.
Wait a minute, what does that mean, legitimated?
Legitimated. So here in Georgia, that means if you have filed a petition to gain visitation rights for your child, then you will be able to have visitation. If you have not, if you're unmarried and have not filed legitimation and you never married the mother of your children, then you will not have visitation rights unless mom agrees to it.
Okay, so can you get legitimated?
You can get legitimated, but it has to be an entirely separate action. Maybe come back and talk about that a little bit later, but you can file that in the Superior Court of the county where the children live.
Okay, I know you want to get into that later, but does that involve like a DNA? Because I'm part of this. I've watched too much Jerry Springer, right. And I'm just like, oh, it's a DNA test time.
That's DNA test time.
So, that is DNA. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So when you're talking about legitimation, you may actually. So, for instance, you may have a domestic situation where mom and dad have never been married. They may live together and get in a domestic violence situation, or dad could be on child support and not have legitimated his kids. So he would have to do a separate action, not in this temporary protective order, to get some kind of visitation rights for his kids.
Wow, that sounds like a very rough and heavy situation.
It is.
Okay, so now we've gotten through a good bit of this process. So you've filed in the right court, you filed in the right county. Mm-hmm. So what happens next here?
So what happens now is, again, we said this is ex parte. This person has the answer, and now if it's granted, it could be from anywhere from 6 months to a year. And then after it's granted, you have to come back if you want it to be extended. So after a year, if these things have persisted or they've violated this order in any kind of way, or this harm or this danger still exists, you have to come back to the court and ask them to extend it. Okay,
so you get this granted for 6 months to a year, so you never actually have to confront this person in court?
And sometimes you don't, but most times the person has to be there. Again, the ex parte order comes first. Then you'll serve the other party and say, hey, come to court, come and answer for the things that you've done. The judge decides at that time if it's going to be a quote-unquote permanent order. Permanent order meaning 6 months to a year or longer. Okay,
so let me ask you a question here because I really don't know the answer to this question. So after you file the ex parte, do you have some protection at that point in time, or do you have to wait till you actually get in front of the judge?
No, the ex parte is an order. It is an order from the court. It is a judge saying do not contact this person or do not come within a certain amount of feet of this person. Do not contact them via email, Skype, pigeon. It doesn't matter. Do not contact this person.
Joey, you didn't know that people are still contacting each other by pigeon, did you?
No.
Yeah, I got a little roost back in my house back there. It's in the back.
I mean, hey, you'd be surprised at sometimes the creative nature in which people try to get into contact with this person, so, try to reconcile what was lost through that process.
Okay, so now you've met with the person in court, and the order lasts for 6 months to a year.
Right.
Is that correct?
Typically, I mean, they can be longer. I've seen orders as long as 5 years or so. It just depends on how egregious the action.
Okay. So when you come back in a year and the situation still hasn't been resolved or it hasn't gotten any better, so you can still just keep filing for longer protection. I mean, it's not over after 6 months or a year, is it?
No, it's not over. If this person is still consistent and the fear is still there and you are able to prove that this person is still an immediate harm, then it can be extended. And that's the thing about protective orders. It's not an end-all, be-all. It's just one thing to protect. Okay,
so now in our situation earlier, if the people are married and you have children, I mean, how is this all going to work? I mean, and especially if the mom is afraid of the kids love the dad, how does all this work? Do you need some kind of plan put in place?
You do. You need a parenting plan. So the temporary protective order serves as almost like a parenting plan. You may have child support in the temporary protective order. You may have some kind of parenting arrangement in the temporary protective order. You'll have a move out date or arrangement in the temporary order. You'll have all kind of details discuss what is going to happen while this temporary order is in place. Because if there isn't an order in place, these married people, regardless, they can't be in the same place at the same time.
Okay, so they have a whole parenting plan. Now, who puts that plan in place? Does the court put that plan in place?
Usually when you're in court, you start with a mediation process. So if you're there with an attorney, your attorney will talk to either his attorney or himself or the father in this case, in our previous example, and discuss what this looks like. If you come to a consent, you can just bring it to the court and say, hey, this person is agreeing to this temporary protective order in these parameters. If not, then you have to do a proposal and the court will come up with one.
Okay, so we've kind of gone through this. We've kind of gone through the considerations for children, for the procedure, where we're going to go, what are the steps to take. So is there anything else we need to consider here in this stage of it?
In this stage, you definitely want to think about how long you want this protective order to be. Tracking if this person is going to, if they're contacting you through friends and family. Do you really consistently feel in fear of your life or not? If this is, like, again, a one-time situation, maybe something that you don't need to extend it any longer. And some people forget that you do have to extend it. So they have a temporary protective order and then they forget to extend it and something happens.
Okay, so we were back here with the children, the family. We're involved in the family's life. Now, are there any situations that we have to consider, like if like the dad is in jail or the mom is in jail? I'm going to quit using the dad. I'm going to be more equal rights here. I'm wearing a pink tie, so yeah. So if the mom's in jail and she has to post bond, does that affect things?
No, it doesn't affect things. It's just for him. He gets out of jail. But again, if you are thinking of considering getting a temporary protective order, you need to think about how the criminal is going to affect the civil. So if you're not in immediate harm through a criminal case, the court may say, well, you're not in immediate harm in the civil case, and you therefore don't need a temporary protective order or a permanent protective order.
Okay, you're listening to Lewis on the Law. We're almost done with this segment. Narissa, will you give them some contact information for you once again?
Sure. I can be reached at Juitt-Jackson Law. That's Juitt, Jackson Law. Or you can give me a call at 678-252-9199.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. When we get back, we're going to go ahead and go through a checklist. We're going to run down through everything we've talked about at this point so we can kind of get you in a right place so you actually have the information you need to make an informed decision here. It's a heavy topic today. I'm glad to have Narissa on with me. It's a pleasure, and thanks for making this a little bit easier because I don't know a lot about this subject. So we'll be back. We'll go through this checklist once again, and we'll wrap this show up. Thanks. You are listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I have a very heavy subject for you, and I have a great person to talk about it. Narissa Juitt Jackson is on with me. Narissa, let's give them some more, because we're wrapping up here. This is going to be the last segment. This is your last chance to get them some contact information for you.
Sure. You can reach out at Juitt, Juitt, jacksonlaw.com, or you can give me a call on anytime, 678-252-9199. We can reach out and hopefully I can help.
My name is James Lewis. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. If you want to get in touch with me, my number is 404-610-0075. You can always email me at james@jameslewislegal.com. You can go ahead and go to my website, jameslewislegal.com. You can go through my archive shows. This show is designed to be a first step in your legal process. It's not designed to replace the advice of an attorney. If you have a serious legal issue, like someone is stalking you, throwing rocks through your window, hassling you with pigeons, go ahead and contact Narissa, or you can contact me and I'll help you find someone like Narissa who can help you with your legal issue. Okay, now we've gone through a lot of stuff. I want to kind of just wrap up and go through. You gave me this great checklist to go through, so I want to kind of just go through it and see where we're at here on our protective order, restraining orders type of actions. So first on the checklist, we have to look through any pending court actions.
Right. So when you're getting a protective order, you may have a divorce pending. You may have a legitimation pending. You may have a defects case pending. So you definitely want to mention those pending cases in your protective order petition. Consider how they can be affected and introducing the protective order as evidence in those pending cases as well.
Now, that is really messy. You've got a divorce pending, you've got legitimation pending, you've got all these things pending, and then you're filing a protective order.
Correct. And sometimes people abuse the system in that they file these protective orders in order to bolster their claim in their pending court actions. And courts and judges are very aware of it. And so you will be seen as the person that's seeking a retaliatory temporary protective order, and that protective order may not be granted.
Yeah, that seems like that would just be a natural first step for a woman who's really got it out for her husband, and he may just be the nicest guy. He may be a guy like Joey over here, or Anthony. You know, he's just the nicest guy, but she's got it out for you, so she's going to hit you with a protective order along with your divorce and everything else she can throw at you, maybe even a criminal action.
Sometimes it's the guy too. So just leave the guys out of this. They file the protective orders too.
Guys, I mean, we're too macho to I don't want to go running for the courts for help.
No, sometimes the men need to file a protective order against the woman for whatever reason because they are aggressive. But sometimes they do use it as a retaliatory means to say, hey, this person is aggressive towards me, and I need them to have a protective order to help me in my divorce case. To them, they make it seem as the wife is a bad actor.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I have never, ever hit a woman in my life, but I have been smacked by ex-girlfriends of mine before. So I can actually see how that would come into play. I would feel a little funny going to a court for a protective order, but I can see how some guys might.
Yeah, it goes both ways again, but unfortunately, the majority of the time it is a man getting a protective order. A woman filing a protective order on behalf of something that a man does, but again, it can be women roommates. It could be same-sex couples. It could be same-sex married couples. It could you just never know the dynamics of the relationship.
Yeah, you don't want to let sex get in the way. Okay, so now let's go into the next part of this checklist. Past investigations involving the parties or parties' children.
Right. So sometimes when you're in the midst of trying to get a protective order, you're very frustrated about the process. You forget that there's all this information that can help bolster your claim and get you the protective order that you're seeking. So there may be a past action where there have been violence against the kids, or there may have been violence that the person that you're seeking the protective order against has done against others. And it's showing the same pattern, the same behavior, either through relationships or other assaults against other people, that you may just say that wasn't against me, it doesn't matter, but it does show a pattern of behavior. Okay,
so that's good. Now when we're showing a pattern of behavior, you're taking into account past orders also, right?
Right. So if you can get those past orders, if you had any past protective orders, you want to definitely bring those up. See if you can get the case numbers, if possible, in the clerk's office, usually in the same building where you're filing the protective order, to let the court know that this is not just this case, but it's been some other cases involving this person, and these parties. Okay.
So the next thing on your list is a really good one to put on your checklist. Does the other party have a handgun?
Yes. Does the other party have a handgun can go to if that handgun was used in the situation itself. Does if there's no criminal charges, does there need to be a criminal charge involved, where the courts need to file something to say, hey, this person has to have this gun removed from them or the home. It also could mean that if this person has threatened, say, for instance, if you don't come home, I'm going to shoot you or something like that, then they may need to have that gun taken away from them just for the protection of the party seeking a protective order.
Now, it doesn't, I mean, just because a person has a gun shouldn't come into play.
No, but again, it is one of those situations, it's better safe than sorry. So it is taken in consideration, it's taken very seriously with the courts. What is going to happen with this gun? Who has it? Where is it located now? Was it used in this action? And, it could be temporarily put up until in such time as determined that they weren't, that the protective order is not going to be in place. But until that, maybe the police need to hold it for a little while.
Yeah, okay. I could see that happening. So next on our checklist is who has the children?
Yes. So if there was an incident where the kids were in the home, maybe DFACS was called. So does DFACS have the kids at this time? Can the kids be put up with a relative or something like that? Because the kids should not be involved in this process. And sometimes people want to bring the kids to court to testify and say, hey, I was there. But it's not the best course of action. There are other ways that the kid's testimony can be involved. You can ask for guardian ad litem or something like that if it gets to that point. But where the kids are, where they're going to live, and just if it's going to be in a shelter or somewhere else.
Yeah, that sounds like a really tricky situation. If you have kids and there's a question of who has kids, like DFACS has kids, and both parents are filing against each other, that's just a messy situation.
It is. And until it gets resolved, sometimes DFACS has to be that unbiased.
The referee.
Yeah, the referee almost to say, well, hey, we're going to place this kid with a third party, neutral relative, or in a foster care situation until this is resolved.
Okay. So now next on your checklist you've given me here, criminal warrants by either party.
Right. So if either party has criminal warrants and then they are violating their, say for instance, they're on probation, they have a warrant against them and things like that, they may be in violation, and this action may be bolstering another claim against them in a criminal action. So if they have any criminal warrants, of course, needs to know that. If they're currently on probation, if there was a gun involved, that may cause for immediate arrest if they haven't already been arrested.
Okay. So next on your checklist here is who owns the property and where do the parties live?
Right. So if there's a protective order and you live together, it's like, well, I don't want to leave my house and you don't want to leave the house. So who leaves the house? It kind of depends on if there are children involved. Usually the person who's going to be the custodian of the children may stay in the home. But also if there's an apartment, whose name is on the lease? If there's roommates, this may be a situation where you can start an eviction process for one of the roommates.
Wow, that sounds like a huge can of worms there, because what if it's like a home and, both couples are, me and my wife are both on the title to our house. How does all that work? Who gets thrown out? Who has to rent a hotel room?
It's hard to say. It just kind of depends on the circumstances. If the wife has another place that maybe she can go, or the husband has another place that he can go, or one person has more funds than the other, is a number of different things that kind of determine who's going to be in the home and who's not.
Okay. So next on your checklist here, you have police reports.
Right. Usually, if the incident has occurred, and you call the police. The police would have had some kind of impression of what have happened. They may have taken witness statements. It helps you with your protective order.
Okay, so we're wrapping up here, but I want to go ahead and talk a little bit. We didn't even actually get through your checklist. We probably should have gotten to this a little bit earlier. But I want to talk about some resources because I know that both you and I are part of the Lawyers for Equal Justice program. That's a place a person can contact to get some help with issues like protective orders. Also, Atlanta Legal Aid gives some help.
Atlanta Legal Aid, Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation is another organization here in Atlanta. And as a matter of fact, Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation has an office in Fulton County called the Safe Families Office, where they help you physically walk through filing a protective order.
Okay, that is great stuff. Narissa, give them some contact information for you real quickly here.
Yeah, you can reach out to me at Juitt, Juitt, JacksonLaw.com, or give me a call at 678-252-9199.
Now, if you're a victim of domestic violence, go ahead. We have a couple of contacts for you, gcadv.org, and you can also call 1-800-33-HAVEN, 1-800-33-HAVEN, and get help. We'll be back next week, and we'll be talking about international tax law. My name is James Lewis. You've been listening to Lewis on the Law.